You guys ready? You ready? Okay, today is Sunday, April 30th, 2023, and this is my little Bible study, and we are departing from our normal schedule for a Sunday night, which should be the book of Genesis, but since we missed last week, quite frankly, because I wasn't ready, we're going to pick it up with this study with the Wednesday night study tonight, and then next Sunday we'll be back on Genesis with Abraham and Sarah and Hagar and Ishmael. We'll finish up that little saga right there next weekend. So tonight and then Wednesday we're going to be working in the book of Exodus. Now, we're in Exodus, but we're not going to spend a whole bunch of time in Exodus because the point gets pretty quick. And then we're going to roll this over into a BEV too. And if it's going to have, it'll probably be called either Cherub or Cherubims or something like that, because that's really what we're going to be talking about tonight. Because the idea of cherubs are kind of up in the air. What is it? What do these things mean? What are these faces always associated with them? What do these things actually mean? All right. Is it a symbol? Is it a creature? Things like this. We're going to do our best to answer some of those things tonight. Tonight's going to be one of those lectures where if you've been studying with us for a while, I expect you to know some things. You need to know the first two lectures of the book of Genesis pretty good. In our image won't hurt one little bit, so we're going to hit on that one. And then the firmaments lecture out of the days of creation, that's another one we're going to kind of touch on again. I'm going to tie them all, weave them together, and hopefully into one clear picture. Gives us a little bit more of a deeper understanding about the cherubims and their role that they played, even in the first heaven and earth age. And that where deep understanding that's where the first two lectures in Genesis comes in, understanding that there are three heaven and earth ages. And we're going to rely on that a little bit tonight as we start going through this to understand. So we're going to have to apply some of the things we've already learned. Now, one of the things, let's just pick it up, though, with in Exodus chapter 26 is where we actually are in the book of Exodus. So let's just pick it up there. Father, we've asked to just find people with open eyes and open ears. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, Exodus chapter 26, verse 1. This is what it says. Let's just talk a little bit about this. We've been talking about the temple, right? Well, not so much the temple, but the temple that will be in the wilderness and the tabernacle of the wilderness, right? So we've had the Ark of the Covenant inlaid in with gold. We've talked about the mercy seat. When we talk about the mercy seat, it's most awfully associated not on the Ark of the Covenant, but above it. So it's not necessarily a lid for the Ark of the Covenant is what my point is. It's just something kind of to bear in mind. We talked about the menorah, the seven candlesticks that we talked about in the book of Revelation, that opens the book of Revelation. Nothing's changed from the beginning to the end. Basically, it's what I wanted people to really kind of get from that. We had the table of showbread, also made out of shittim wood, as part of the third creation of the tabernacle. We had the spoons and the bowls and things such as that, all made from gold. And now we're getting to the temple part, to the actual housing part and what's going on. Now, let's pick it up then in chapter 26, verse 1. Moreover, thou shalt make a tabernacle with 10 curtains of fine twined linen, blue, purple, and scarlet. So we've got some more colors again. We've talked also about the colors in the tabernacle. The number 50 is going to start showing up again too. And in the book of Exodus, we've talked about what it said it was going to be like when they went into the promised land, from sea to sea they would cover, just like here in the United States. We'll start having other parallels that run to the United States, and the number 50 is one of them. Of course, we have 50 states. Yeah. All right, and this is one of the things you're going to see repeated in this. And I don't mean to point that out to prove anything, but it does add just more to the evidence of the overall evidence that we begin to compile after you start looking at it in a kind of a critical nature. All right, now, when we start talking about these cubits, we're not going to get into the numbers too much. It's 18 inches per cubit. It's 1.5 feet. If you want to figure out exactly how long, go ahead and just do the math, but we're just going to kind of go through them, all right? Now, verse 2, the length of one curtain shall be 28 cubits, and the breadth of the curtain 4 cubits. And every one of the curtains shall have one measure, so they're all the same, all right? Verse 3, 5, I skipped something. Let's go back. With cherubims of cunning work shalt thou make them. Back in verse 1, I didn't finish the verse. And that's the point of the last lecture, the cherubims anyway. So let's just go back up there. All right, so we have the colors assigned again, and the cherubims of cunning work. Now, these cherubims are the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion. All right, now where you begin to see these, here's where you first begin to see these cherubims. Now what you're going to find is these cherubims are embroidered in gold all along, all around the Ark of the Covenant on the inner sanctum. Now, as we go through this, you'll find how the sanctum's broken down. But the cherubims, their job, is to watch the mercy seat. That is their specific job. And they're indicated with 4 symbols, which are the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion. Right? Now, when you get into the book of Numbers, you'll find it in the tribes are camping in the wilderness or in the book of Numbers. Well, when they camp, 3 tribes are camped under each one of these standards. So the faces of the cherubims and the standards of Israel are the same. And we're going to try and understand exactly why tonight. That's what this is really all about. Now, to really begin to understand this, we're going to draw on, like I said, in our image was one of the lectures that we're going to try to draw on. All right, and the crux of that comes in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 39 and 40. I want to flip over there real quick. What did I say? 15? Yeah. 39 and 40. All right. Now, what I want to get out of this is how many bodies you have. All right? And this is where it just simply states it, okay? Verses 39 and 40, listen to what it says. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there's one kind of flesh for man, another flesh for beasts, another for fishes, another for birds. All right, we got several types of flesh. All right, now here's a little word to the wise. When the Messiah actually returns, it's the end to all flesh. All right, remember that. So if you're still in your flesh body and your pet is still your pet, well then Christ has not actually returned. All right, and that's one thing that you have. People often lose sight of that because they think when they think about the transfiguration, they just think about humans, which you can understandable why. But it's not just humans, it's all flesh. All right, so we're talking about a total reversion all the way back to our spiritual nature from the first heaven and earth age. All right. So there's all kinds of different kinds of flesh. All right. Now listen to what it says though in verse 40. There are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. But the glory of the celestial is one and the glory of the terrestrial is another. All right. Now that's what you want to get out of this, is that you have 2 bodies. One is terrestrial, terra firma, the earth, of the soil. The other one is celestial, of the abode of God. So you have one of the abode of the earth, another of the abode of God. Now the thing that you need to understand is which one actually comes first. It's the chicken or the egg. When you're conceived and born into this world, is that when your soul is created and then you return into a celestial nature? A lot of people think that that's how it is. That you're born here and you die and you go and you be judged for just exactly what you've done here. But that's not really what's going on. All right. Now, if you remember, when we were talking about this, you remember what did it say? That Christ came in the express image of God, right? Mm-hmm. So in our image, it means when he walked the earth, what Christ looked like, I mean, we don't know because we weren't there and they didn't take a picture. All right, but when he walked the earth, that's exactly what our Father looks like because he was created within his spiritual realm, right? Now, that tells you a few things. But I want the Bible to answer it just straight up. Actually, I want Christ to answer it. Switch over to John chapter 3 from here. Let's go to the New Testament real quick. All right, because he had to say something about this chicken or egg thing. John answers it, actually. John, what did I say? 3, that's right, because 3:16 is the most memorized. The most memorized verse in the entire Bible, actually. But that's not really where we're going to. We're going to John 11 is where we're going to pick it up. Okay, now listen to what it says about this, about the order. Okay, because that's really what I was talking about. It was like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is your celestial body older, or is your terrestrial body the thing that's the older? And the Bible actually answers it right here. Listen to what it says in verse 11. Verily, verily, this is the red letter, so this is the man himself talking, all right? Verily, verily, or truly, truly, I say unto you, we speak that we do, and we testify that we have seen, and you receive not our witness. If I have told you of earthly things, he's talking about what he was talking about up here in the rest of this. If I told you of earthly things, you believe not. How shall you believe if I tell you of heavenly things? He said, you don't even believe me when I tell you about stuff that's going on here. You don't have any concept of the things that happen on a spiritual level. All right. Now, so what he says, verse 13. This is why we came. And no man hath ascended up to heaven. All right, so there's nobody that's ever been born that has returned to heaven. What does it say? That but he that came down from heaven, even the Son of Man which is in heaven. See, as Christ was born in the image of God, all right, nobody has returned, even Christ, all right, that didn't first come down. So therefore, your spiritual nature is much older than your flesh. All right, and think about how many times we've had this term test come up. You know, we talked about the manna was a test. All right, the book of Revelation says these things in the end times is a test. Okay, so God will test your mettle. All right, now, so you've got to grab a hold of this then. This comes out of both those first two lectures and this that your spiritual nature is actually the older of the two. That you come from there and are born of the flesh again to be tested. Just like with the manna, just like with the book of Revelation, every person makes a trip. So the point of a test is to learn something, to see if you've learned. So to be born of the flesh is simply a test, no matter what age you've been born in, what part in history, is still the same test. So we all have things that we have to learn, have to master, and this trip in the flesh, our life, is part of learning those things. All right? But here we see that it's actually the celestial body then that's actually your older one. All right, now the only reason I wanted to bring that up was because we often lose track of what the difference is between an angel, all right, and a soul. And the only difference is are you in flesh or are you in your spiritual body? That's the actual answer. Well, something was going on, but we're back. All right, so that messed me up. Now I forgot where I was. Okay. So we have two types of bodies. One's flesh, one's celestial. Now, in a celestial, what you would call an angel a celestial being, right? I would too. A cherub is an angel. Or a cherubim is an angel, so he's a celestial being. Now, these faces we were talking about are the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion. But remember what it said, who was the original cherub? You know who that is? Yeah, Lucifer was the original one. Flip over to Ezekiel chapter 28. And we will pick it up. Let me find it. I always lose Ezekiel. There it is. Okay, chapter 28. We're going to pick it up in verse 11. All right? Hold on just one second while I run and grab something to drink. I'm going to do this beforehand. I didn't. Surprise, surprise.
Where in Ezekiel?
Chapter 28, verse 11. All right, and we're going to pick it up with the lamentation of the king of Tyre. Now, this is a type. This is one of them types you get in the Bible, all right, the king of Tyre. Tyre means rock, all right. Now, if you remember from studies out of Daniel, you'll understand that there's a white rock that smashes the feet of the image of Babylon that brings the whole thing down, which is representation for Christ, the same white stone that he possesses in the book of Revelation, all right, or spoken of. Now, Tyre means rock, all right, but this is a false rock. All right, now listen to what it says. This false rock is the original cherub, which is Lucifer, right? Listen to what it says in 11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, or the king of the rock, and saying to him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sum, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. So we're talking about Lucifer. He's beautiful, right? Because we often paint this picture of this thing with a pointy tail and, pitchfork and things like that. But no, he's quite beautiful, quite appealing, all right? He's the original slickster. Verse 13, Thou hast been in the garden of Eden, thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Talked about the serpent, right? The things that occurred there. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardis, the topaz, the diamond, the pearl, the onyx, the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, the carbuncle, the gold, and the workmanship of thy tablets and thy pots was prepared in thee in the day that thou was created. Now all those stones, that sounds a lot like the stones of the priesthood, right? Because the priests have 12 stones. There's not quite 12. There's only 10 here. All right, but you see where it all starts to begin. All right? What does it say about him? Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. All right, the original. All right? There's 4 now. All right, but back then there wasn't. In the first heaven and earth ages, there was only one. His job was to protect the mercy seat. But instead of protecting it, he wanted to sit on it and be God himself. And because of this, he was able to convince 1/3 of the souls to follow him. And because of those decisions, that age was destroyed, and now we are now born of flesh to sort this stuff out once and for all. All right, and that's what the last days, is all about. All right. Now that was the anointed cherub that covereth. That's what it means. It covereth, all right? And that was his original job, all right? That was perfect in thy ways from the day that thou was created till iniquity was found in thee. By the merchandise, by the multitude of thy merchandise, thou hast filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God. I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Now that is the priesthood. You're going to wipe him out completely from it. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. He got to looking in the mirror a little too much. And a little bit proud of who he was and what he'd become. You got to remember, at one time, Lucifer was just one of us in the beginning of the first heaven and earth age. He rose from our ranks to be the original cherub. Until iniquity was found in him. Thou hast defiled the sanctuaries by the multitude of thy iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic, super rich. Remember when he appears in Daniel, it's a chicken in every pot, right? That he conquers the world with peace and prosperity, not a whip and a chain, not a missile and a gun, but with peace. It's hard to speak against peace and prosperity, but in the future you'll have to, or you'll end up bearing the mark of the beast. Listen to what it says about him. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries, and by the multitude, we've already did that one. By traffic, that's where we stopped. Let me start with verse 18 again. Thou hast defiled the sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, and by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore, I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, and it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of them that behold thee. Okay, now that all happens at Judgment Day, right? But what happens on the first day of the millennium? This cracker here is put in the pit, right? Where he's chained, and it's a spiritual chain. He's influenced, cannot influence anybody during the millennium. But after that 1,000 years is up, he's released one more time. People say, why? So most of the people won't stand justified, but because he is such a little slick willy. All right? So many people will be taught in the millennium. And if God doesn't want anything that's not tested. Flat out. That's the point. We've been talking about test off and on. All right? To be tested is the point. All right? And in the last days, the whole book is an example for us to follow of those things that will befall us in the last days. So therefore, all this has a direct influence on us. All right? Listen to what it says in the last verse. But nonetheless, it tells you what? He's going to bring up a fire. He goes, here's what hell is really all about. All right? When he brings up that fire, it's a fire that starts within you. It's not an external thing. Yeah, and it devours you from the inside, from your soul outward. Yeah. All right? And forever and ever is just an expression. The ashes and smoke will, and forever and ever you'll never be again. Yeah. That's complete and utter. Not only that, but the people that survive won't even remember you ever existed. So you were blotted out of history, out of existence, even an existence that extends back for who knows how many million years. Okay? And that means a big deal when you start. It's hard to tell in flesh because from the time we're born, we deal with the fact we'll die. Yeah. All right? But we don't realize what it looks like from being eternal from the beginning and looking at death for the first time. So there's a big lesson just within that. All right. Verse 19, and they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee, and thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. And that's how it ends right there. All right, so that's the birth and the death and the life of the original cherub ball in a nutshell in chapter 28. All right, it's created perfect. His pipes were prepared him to sing, mastery. He has a lot of charisma. How does he come think about what he does to the world? He convinces everybody on the world at their idea and fulfills their idea of what the Messiah is. Not just what Christians think, but what the Jews think, what Islam thinks, what Buddhism thinks, everything. So don't think he ain't just Slick Willie. All right, so he's the original. All right, now we want to look at what, but that's the original. Since his downfall, now there are four. Never again will there just be one to watch. Everybody's got somebody watching them. All right, that's a military thing, right? When you put somebody out, you never send somebody by themselves. Two people are a lot braver than one person by themselves, and that's just a fact. If you've ever been in combat, you'll know that's true. You feel better when somebody's with you. The situation hasn't changed, but you feel better when there's somebody next to you. All right. So now that there's four of them, let's pick up on them. My favorite place to study about them bad bears is in Ezekiel chapter 1, so let's just flip over there. We'll go from here to Ezekiel chapter 1, since we're already there. All right, now we're going to pick it up in verse 4. And let's see, how far did I say we're going to go? We're going to go down 21, so we're going to be here in just a little bit, all right? Because now we come up with what the cherubims we have today, all right? All right. We're going to pick it up in verse 4, chapter 1 of Ezekiel. Now, let's set this up, because Ezekiel is going to try to explain to you something that he has no words to explain. None. There's nothing in Ezekiel's vocabulary from how many years BC he is to what he's going to see. He has no words that are in his vernacular to describe what's going to happen to him. Now, if you remember, this happens to another person we know, Paul. Paul, instead of Ezekiel's going to see something from the first heaven and earth age, all right? And Paul gets a look into the third, and when Paul, he says the same thing. For 5 languages, he said the things that I saw, it's unlawful for a man to even say, which just means I don't know. I don't know what. It's amazing. You don't have the words to describe. Right? Though this is how Ezekiel feels when looking at this thing that he's going to see from the first heaven and earth age. All right, and we're going to get into that a little bit. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then you got some work to do. First 2 chapters of Genesis, first 2 lectures of the book of Genesis on my little Bible study YouTube station is everything you probably ever thought you would want to know about it. And there's even more. All right. Here we go. Verse 4. I looked, and behold, a whirlwind cometh out of the north. Okay, whirlwind. That's a word that you're going to want to use your Strongs for. Not for its meaning, but to find the other places that this word is used. All right, because when it's used, it's talking about what happens here in Ezekiel. All right, and sometimes the description of the whirlwinds is just that. And the whirlwinds cometh. All right. So remember that. When you see the word or hear the word whirlwind in here, there's a whole bunch of things associated with it. All right, with the coming of the whirlwind. All right. A great cloud of fire enfolding itself. All right. A brightness was about it, and out of the midst thereof is the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. All right, now, we've all seen in the 21st century what it looks like when an object comes through the atmosphere at great velocity. All right, we've seen it all the way from the beginning of the space age, all the way back in time with asteroids and comets. All right, that's a vivid picture, and it's exactly the way it is, a fire unfolding itself. If you don't think so, just watch any rocket coming back or any capsule coming back from the International Space Station. But the key to understanding is color and amber, okay? Because there are no such words as color or amber in Hebrew. All right? Color means the eye. All right? And amber means a highly polished spectrum metal or something metallic. So really what he says is out of the midst thereof, he saw something metallic come out of the midst of the fire as it came in. And that's key to the understanding of what's going on here in the book of Ezekiel. And that updates you to a more current level to where we are. Because we have the ability to understand exactly what Ezekiel is seeing. All right? Verse 5, also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures. And this was their appearance, or this is what they looked like. They had the likeness of a man. So they all look like a man. All right? And every one had 4 faces and 4 wings. And their feet were straight feet. All right? And the soles of their feet were like the soles of a calf's foot, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass. All right? So this foot, let's just call it a vehicle. We'll call it a chariot of fire. A chariot of fire is what it's called when you're talking about Elijah. All right? That's what he calls it, a spiritual chariot. All right? And it's an amazing piece of equipment, but it is equipment. And people say, well, this is the kind of things that we were dealing with in the first heaven and earth age. Yeah. This vehicle can move anywhere. Listen to what it says about it. It had straight feet, right? So it doesn't walk. It just lands and sets down right on its feet and doesn't move anywhere, just like any other kind of an aircraft does. That's a VTOL kind of an aircraft, right? Right. Why did its color like the color of burnished brass? Because it was metallic. That was what he saw with his eye come out of the fire, something metallic. Verse 8. And they had the man's, I love this verse, all right? And they had the hands of a man under their wings on their 4 sides, and they 4 had 4 faces and their wings, all right? So he says, Ezekiel doesn't know what he's seeing, all right? But he does see a relationship. He does know that what the cherub is doing with his hands is what's controlling this chariot. All right, because it's his hands that are under the wings. He doesn't know how, but what the man's doing with his hands is what's making this thing work. Yeah. All right, and that's what he's trying to convey to you, but he just doesn't have the words to. He doesn't understand. All right, he wouldn't know how to describe that. He's just give him a helicopter and thing to describe that thing as it spins and whirls and flies, and see what he comes up with to describe that. All right. Verse 9. Now. This is really interesting because we're entering Ezekiel in this chapter. You're not going to get anywhere with this if you don't realize that he's going to see 2 different groups of vehicles. All right, and here's the description of the first one, the one he calls cherubs. All right, their wings were joined one to another, and they turned not when they went, and they went every one straight forward. All right, they're joined one to another. All right, listen to what it says, verse 10. As for the likeness of their faces, they 4 had the faces of a man, and the face of a lion on the right side, and they 4 had the face of an ox on the left side, and they 4 also had the face of an eagle. A man, the ox, eagle, and lion. All right, now what you don't want to miss now is this, because what you'll see from illustrations about cherubs is you'll see a creature that they've designed with 4 heads looking in every direction. It's a mythological kind of a thing. I've seen the same thing with the book of Revelation. In my life, there's a large group of people who think that when it talks about the beast of the book of Revelation, that there's an actual beast that's going to rise up out of the sea, start tearing up the land all over the world. All right, but that's not exactly how that goes down, right? There's symbols and right. All right, and this is kind of the same way. Instead of building a mythological beast, what you have to do is build an accurate understanding of what a cherubim really is doing. All right. Cherub is a cherub that covers. They covered the mercy seat. The mercy seat is the place where Christ sits and dispenses mercy to the children. All right? Now, the 4 faces that they have, what does that tell you? Israel camped under the same 4 faces. So the overall picture, think about the first heaven and earth age then, all right? When Lucifer rebelled, all right, it was the cherubims that covered the mercy seat. Well, if the man, the ox, and the eagle, and the lion are the 4 faces of cherubims, and the man, the ox, and the eagle, and the lions are the standards of Israel, that would mean then that Israel is the cherub that covereth. All right, so to be in that group of Israel is an important thing. Because it gives you a lot of latitude because you've already succeeded, where many have already failed. Not to say that we weren't tempted, and that's not the way we didn't fail in some level, but at least in the end, we knew where we stood. And that's one of the reasons I believe that God promises so much to the children of Israel, just kind of blanket. You know, you can think so they earned it already. Right, yeah. All right, they already earned it. They already stood up when they had to stand. And I think that's a very important thing to pull out of all that. I know we're going to go on a little bit more because this is even better, all right? Thus were their faces and their wings were stretched upward, 2 wings on every one joined together, and 2 covered their bodies. All right, now listen, we're getting described these are control surfaces we're talking about. All right, it's metallic, it's moving around, it has a VTOL capability. All right, you have two wings that are joined, they all have four wings, but we have these configurations for aircraft all the time. Anything with a V-tail and a delta shape. Stealth fighter, stealth bomber, the joint strike fighter, it go all the way back for a long time through aeronautic history, and you're going to get kind of that kind of configuration, right? We have four of these bad bears that have those kind of attributes, let's just say, because I don't think it is the stealth fighter or stealth bomber, but I'm just saying that's that kind of a configuration that that's just being described. Like I said, Ezekiel don't know how to say it, but he sees four wings on these things. Two of them are joined together, and two of them extend down their sides, and they take off fast. So they don't turn when they go. Well, that means they don't look. All right, that just means they just turn and bank and go. All right, they don't look where they go. They just go. All right, and you see, trying to explain these things in detail, and so sometimes we kind of lose the detail. That's what it says, 12. And they went everyone straight forward, whether the Spirit was to go. They went, and they turned not when they went. Just like you said before. As for the likeness of the living creatures, and this is important, right? This is talking about the cherub, the man's hands that are under the wings, right? As for the likeness of the living creature, their appearance was like burning coals of fire. All right, and like the appearance of lamps, and it went up and down among the creatures, and the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightnings. So, boy, this is powerful. A lot of energy we're talking about here. But now, these creatures are described as like burning coals of fire. Now, the cherubim's never going to be born of flesh, not even the fallen one. People I know think that they are, but if you're born of the flesh, when we were in John, because that's what he's talking about, how do you receive redemption? So to be born of flesh, that was where he got with his explanation that there's none that went back to be judged that didn't first come down. That was the point, was to be born of flesh, right? These bad bears are never going to be born of flesh because their loyalty to God has never been challenged. It's only ours are the ones that are actually born of flesh. Same with Michael, Gabriel. Right? They're one of the sons of God, just like we are. But they're done with it. Their loyalty was never questioned one time. So they earned their positions, right? Right, and then so since we're created in the image of God and the angels, and we don't have wings, so these wings then, so neither do they unless it's like they're wings that we make and fly on. All right, so that's where a lot of confusion comes between the four faces and these wings. We build this mythological creature that's never existed and never will. Not anywhere in God's world. It's more explained like you do for dinosaurs, or like you would for unicorns and in other places. It's just bad word. Yeah. Ezekiel's doing the best that he can with the language that he has to describe the things that he knows. Yeah. And the most advanced thing he's ever seen is a chariot. Right. Yeah. And that would be the equivalent to an M1 Abram to him. All right. Pretty much. Right. That's kind of the way it would be. So Ezekiel's really doing a pretty good job just considering he's describing something that comes from the first heaven and earth age. And he has no concept of it. But boy, he is doing his absolute best to give you the best description that he can. Right.
There's nothing like that.
That's right. That's right. It'll have the same effect on us today. Right. That's right.
Because look at what we deal with technologically.
But the feeling that Ezekiel is feeling is the exact same feeling that we would have if we were encountered it. That's right.
You know what I mean? They don't understand magnetic force.
They don't anything, right. And now listen to what it says about these cherubs, these ones with the wings, all right? It says, and the living creature ran and returned in the appearance of a flash of light. All right? So wherever they're told to go, they just disappear, and then they reappear and completed the message. I mean, who knows where they go, when they go even, but whatever it is, they accomplish it, and they appear back within about the same instant. All right? And now I beheld the living creatures, and behold, all right, so here we're going to leave the ones with wings, and we're going to move to a different set of vehicles. Listen to what it says. And now, as I beheld the living creatures, the cherubims, the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion, behold, one wheel upon the earth by the living creatures, with the four faces. And the appearance of the wheels and their work was like unto the color of beryl. And they four had one likeness. They all looked the same, all right? And their appearance and their work whereas a wheel within the middle of a wheel. And this is really important because this is often overlooked. This is what it says in 17.
Like a tire on a wheel.
Okay, right. Okay, listen to what it says
Wheel is a
next.
wheel.
And when they went, all four of them, they went upon their four sides. Okay, and they turned not when they went. So, okay, a wheel is this way.
Yeah. Oh,
All right.
yeah.
And all four of these wheels, when they went, they're on their side.
Yeah.
So they're parallel to the ground. To the horizon. Right.
Yeah.
See, because you're going to see a lot of illustrations of this wheel that spins like this with a wheel inside of it spinning either in the opposite direction or the same direction or things like that. But that's not what it says. No. When they went about their work, they did it all four of them on their side. All right. Now listen, verse 18. And their rings, or their heights, were so high that they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about the four. Right? They had windows. That's what those eyes round about. Listen to what it says, because he can see in it. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And this sounds weird, why you would say it this way. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Why? Because it tells you where we're here next. Whither so the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature, the cherubim, was in the wheels. All right, they were inside of it. All right, it wasn't like a chariot, like you see a horse-drawn chariot. All right, these bad bears have windows that go all the way around, and he can see inside of it, and he can see what they're doing. Just like with the cherubims, he can tell that whatever they're doing with their hands is making this thing go. Doesn't have a head, it doesn't turn, it just goes wherever it wants. All right? And when those stood, those went. And when those stood, verse 21, and that's where we're stopped. And when those went, these went. And when those stood, these stood. And when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Twice for emphasis, and we know what that means. It was given to you 2 times in a row, so you do not miss the point. All right, because without that emphasis, you start building a mythological creature that will never be seen anywhere, heaven or in earth. All right, but instead you don't recognize the cherubim for what they are. They guard the mercy seat. Yeah. All right, cherub, the root is like cherub. It means to like grab or grip or grasp. And the way I like to look at it, you mess up in front of them, and they will snatch you up by the short hairs and take care of business. All right, because that's what they have done from the beginning of time. All right, and nothing's going to change that. All right, so now we know with the original cherub, we know his fate is death, to be turned to ash from within in the sight of all of us. All right, he'll be the first one, probably gone. All right, or the last, I don't care as long as he's gone. Okay, that gets us through that. That would probably be a pretty good place to stop. Let me see if there's anything else I want to hit real quick. 28, Ezekiel 1, John, we got all that. Chicken and egg, we talked about that. All right. We got just a little bit. All right, I want to go through a kind of an analogy. I want to go back a little bit because we're running just a little bit ahead of schedule, actually, which is unusual for me. I'm almost always behind. Almost always. It's just a condition of life for me. Okay. I want to lay out an analogy. All right? It has to go. Let's go back to where we started with 2 bodies, right? You got a celestial body and a flesh body. Now, we are taught often, in many churches anyway, let's just put it that way, that an angel is a being that can only do the will of God and has no choice, and therefore they have no real soul, and they're just a servant. They can't possibly be anything else, but that's not what the word angel actually means. All right, if you grab the dictionary, if you grab a Strong's, in any place you want to find the word angel, you'll find out that simply means messenger. So it's just a herald. Well, it'd be like, I don't know, Silver Surfer is a herald of Galactus. I mean, to put that into some terms that because exactly like that. All right. So this, I want to help people kind of understand a little bit more about that then. When a child comes to you and a kid will come to you and say, well, where do I come from? Well, you come from God, right? And then about the next question, as they get a little bit older, about, well, where do I go when I die? I said, what am I? Well, you're an angel. You return to God. All right? And we say these things in simplistic ways to placate a child's curiosity often, but we're telling them the truth, and we just fail to kind of apply it as we get a little bit older, right? But that same simplistic truth that we tell the child these things actually holds quite a bit of truth to it. Now, this is an analogy I want to help with that, all right? Because any one of the sons of God can be an angel if they're given a mission. It's mission specific. If you're a Marine, you'll understand exactly what that means. All right? Anyone. And this analogy, I think, helps people explain a little bit about souls, right? If me and you are sitting here praying, we're praying, and you go outside, and like Ezekiel saw, the heavens were opened up, and God tells you, say, I want you to go find him and tell him, God says. All right? And so you being a good servant, heaven's closed, you go find him, all right, and you say, hey, him, God says. All right? At that point, you are a traditional Old Testament prophet. God has given you a message, all right, and you've taken it to the intended person. You told them the message. That makes you a prophet. You're a faithful servant. Okay. Well, let's just say him's not as faithful as you, so him gets mad and kills you. All right. So we know, and the Bible then says in Ecclesiastes, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So you appear before God dead, and he said, well, what are you doing? Well, I told him killed me. All right? You go, So God looks at you, because you're in your spiritual body now. All right? And he looks at you and tells you go back and you tell him I says. So you go back and you appear before him again. Now you're a mighty angel.
Yeah.
All right? You've been given a message in your spiritual body. All right? So now you're playing the role of an angel. So one person can play both roles, both the role of a prophet and the role of an angel. If you remember our study in the book of Revelation, John runs into this. Remember? When he sees the first angel, he falls down at his feet and begins to worship. And the angel picks him up, makes him stand up and says, don't do that. So I'm one of your brethren. I'm a prophet, a believer in Christ, just like you. So he came from the same tribe. He was also converted to Christianity, and now he's died and he appears as an angel to John. And we just overlook these things. So these little these little sayings that we tell our children that have these kernels of truth in them, we just quit applying them when we get older. All right, because that's the right answer we give the kids. It's just we don't continue to think about it. We try to think. And the cherubim's one of them. Yeah. It's a celestial body. He's a cherub. That's an angel. Yeah. He has a mission. His mission is he's a cherub. He stands inside of it.
Guards the mercy seat.
Right, and we're going to get into more about this now as we get through this. Thursday we'll get farther into Exodus and about the temple and all those things that comes with it. All right, which really gets kind of interesting.
So his actual description of the cherubims being these vehicles aren't as inaccurate. It's the beings inside the vehicles that are the cherubims.
That are the cherubims, right. It's the angel. Yeah. An angel is a cherub. It's not a chariot. The chariot, right. Yeah. Because the cherub, the man, the ox, right. That's right. That's exactly right. You got to separate. Because the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. Right. That's right. That's so the cherubim's in there. That's not right. They're the vehicles that a cherub drives, right? Gotcha. Yeah. So people, we lose this, right?
I don't think anybody's ever said that before.
Right. I don't know,
but when you read it, I mean, it's clear
that's right. That's what it is, right? And since the faces of the cherubims and the standards of Israel are the same, that means they're completely connected. I mean, you can't. It's not going to be just some arbitrary mistake.
Of course.
Right? Especially when the word whirlwind is used and almost always implies the same thing that's going on with Ezekiel. So if that does, they're not going to throw that up there willy-nilly just because. It's got to mean something deeper.
Right, yeah.
And that's the only thing that I can come up with. In the first heaven and earth age, when Lucifer rebelled, Israel, the man, the ox, the eagle, and the lion, is the cherubim that cover it. Right, so now there's four of them. They watch each other's back. Nobody can be corrupted because you got somebody checking you. Yep. You'll find out in law about churches in the New Testament, it's the same way when it comes to money. Like when you collect the tithe, you don't ever leave one person in charge of the tithe. You always have two people there. It keeps accountability and it keeps you honest. Yeah. And that way there's no mistakes made. You can't be accused, you can't be falsely accused. If it ends up missing, you both are guilty. Yeah. So those kind of things, right? So that's even the same way with the cherubs. Because their job, like I said, protect the mercy seat, and without that, we don't have hope. So, Anyway, I hope that helped. I hope people understand a little bit more about cherubs and then what your role between angels and the flesh and soul, actually, what the difference between soul and angel. Just what body you're in your flesh body or in your spiritual body. And that's kind of what it comes down to. Anyway, you guys have a good night. That's,